Hello guys, I am Aditya. In this video, I'm going to explain you guys about queues, linked list, and in the previous video, I have explained about the ear diagram of a delivery logistic company, and I'm going to explain about how the queues, linked list work in the real world companies and how they are going to use it. Basically, if we talk about queues is a linear data structure. We can call it's a first in first out. Like basically what is first in first out? If you think like you guys will be going to like movies, if you see you're going to stand in a queue for the ticket, so the person who is going first, he will be getting the ticket first, and the person who is standing in the behind, he will be getting the ticket in a few minutes. So if we see like in queues, I'm going to take some example. Like I want train. If you take about train, basically we can consider this box as an engine head of the train, and these are the coaches, multiple coaches. Train will be having multiple coaches. So you guys can see this engine is linked to each and every coach. Engine is right now, engine is the head of the train. So if you see this train is going into the station, if you see uh, the engine enters into the station first and it leaves the station first. We can say it's also basically type of queue. So if you talk about the linked list, engine is connected into the coaches line by line. So we can see that I'll just show you the previous diagram. This is our ear diagram of delivery logistic company. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about how it works in the real life base and how queues are going to be worked in this company. When we talk about the pseudocode of the queues are using link. I'm going to explain you guys how the queues are going to work using linked list. So if we talk about like pseudocode, firstly we have to take a class like node class, and then we have to make a like head. We have to give some data, and then we have to give like its location. If we talk about linked list, it will be having it's a data, and the next one is location. The location of the data. We can call it a node. So if we take another node, how this node is going to be connected to the previous one is we have to connect this location to this node. I'm going to give this data like around 20, and this is having a location around 3000. That's a location. So I'm going to connect this location to this data, and those are connected like trains. Like this data is engine, this data is coach. Normally we take this first one as head and the next one as tail. So if we talk about this pseudocode, I'm going to give data input, and we have to take the next element as the location of the data, and then we have to define another class. Like right now we are going to talk about like queues. I'm just going to give the name of queues. And then if you talk about queues are having two types. We call it NQ. NQ means inserting the data into the queues, and another data type is DQ. DQ means deleting the data. Like if we talk, I just gave example of train. If you consider the train example, the engine is going first into the railway station, and then it's leaving first. So the engine is the top element. So and then we just call the first element as front element. I won't write it. First element as front, and s- last element, rear, rear element. So at starting, so we did not insert the data anything. So starting we have to consider those two, like front and rear as none, because we did not give any data. So we had to consider those two as none. And then we can define like firstly we define NQ part. So we'll be giving NQ, and here the constructor is used, like we're going to like use like init function, and here also we're going to use the constructor init function. So if we talk about the NQ, basically it's just starting. So the front and rear is none. If we can just write if uh, front is none, if front is none, front is equals to new node. New node means the node which we are giving input, and then if case is completed, and then if we talk about like we got elif means another case. If friend is we just give here like it's if we give the first element is new node, right now it's having containing only one. So the front and rear is going to take like around new node. So if we come into the elif case, we are going to take like self dot. Normally we just give like self everything. We can take any element like here we are giving like self dot next is equals to new node, and then we can write self dot rear is equals to new node. So if you see here clearly, the front is the first node and the rear is the last node. So if we see that, yes, we are not taking front at all. So we are just keeping the front as the first element and the rear will be going to be the last element. So if we see here, like we are just vision of the rear. Like if we see this line, we are just giving self dot rear dot next. So the next node of the data will be connected to the new node. So the new node will be self dot rear. If you see here, I just mentioned down clearly. So it's the basic thinking. Firstly, before writing any code, we have to just take a pen and paper and then just try draw the diagram and understand everything. We can understand everything very easily. So this is the basic implement of pseudocode. In the further video, in the going video, you guys can see the coding. I'm just going to tell you about the coding part and everything and explain everything clearly. So if you guys might not know about the queues, linked list, you guys can understand it very easily. So we are just taking here like next DQ. So here we are going to take here DQ. Here we're going to take here DQ. And then if we talk about DQ, like if there are no elements in the list, like like I told, front is the first element. If there are no elements in the list, we can just say here like if friend is none, we can just write return. We can return like list is empty, and we can just say if friend is none, like it's the first element. If the first element is none, we cannot just take out the element because there are no elements in the list. We can just write the elif case. If we talk about elif, like I'm just giving some random name for self for the first element. See, I'm just going to like same new node. I'm going to give like new node friend dot data. Data means the input, the which input I'm giving over the up here, the which input I'm giving. So that's basically I'm just denoting as data. So new node will be the name. So data. and then you can just write uh, friend is equals to friend dot next. So if you write like this, just understand this very easily. Take a pen and paper and just write the line and just think what's going to happen next. As I told previously, self dot friend is the first element. If we consider self dot friend dot next as the first element, so we are taking second element as the first element. The first element is going to break the link and it's going to delete it. So basically it's a linked list. Every element is linked to the another element. So if we take the second element as first element, the link is same. This element which is over here, this is going to be deleted. So if we write like friend is equals to friend dot next, the first element is going to delete it and the second element is going to be the first element. This is how we are going to take use in a linked list. So if we see here, if there are, I'm going to tell about another case right now. Inside this if case, if there are only two elements in the linked list, you're going to take, sorry, if there is only one element, you're going to, we cannot consider this self dot next because there is no any second element. So directly you're going to take this self dot rear or friend. They both are same. Self dot friend is equal to self dot rear when there is only one element. So we can just consider the self dot rear as none directly. So if like we can just write uh, rear or friend, if self dot rear is none, we can just consider it's none. We can just write self dot rear is none. Okay, and here the pseudocode of the DQ and the NQ is completed. So right now we are going to show the elements which are present inside the linked list. So when we take, we can just give another function like display function like def display. If we see here, if self dot friend is none, self dot friend means it's the first element. If the first element is none, we cannot just print there is no element in the list. So we can just write self dot friend is none, then we can just write directly print list is empty. So if the self dot friend is not, that's the else case. We can just denote like same around new node is equals to self dot friend. Okay, right here we can just run the loop. I think you guys might heard while loop is infinite loop. We can use the while loop like self dot friend dot next is not none. We can just say print dot self dot friend dot data. If we use the dot data, that's going to print the element which is in the linked list. And if you want to print like in the same line, we can just write end is equals to colon and you can just close it. And we have give indentation. Oh, sorry guys, I'm going to write it once again. It's def display if self dot friend is none. You can just display directly like print list is empty or else new node. Define new node. New node is equals to self dot friend and we can just run here loop while loop because it's a infinite loop. Self dot friend dot next means it's going to take the second element. If the second element is not none, it is going to print the elements. Self dot friend dot data. If self dot friend is not next, it's going to bring the data. So right now, if self dot friend is the first element, so it's going to bring the first element. If you want to print it in a line, we can just write here and using colons. And at down, we can write self dot friend is equals to self dot friend dot next. So here you guys can see here self dot friend is equal to self dot friend dot next. Basically, what is this? Here we're going to take the first element is equal self dot friend. Second element is self dot friend dot next. So here we are considering here self dot friend dot next is as first element. So we can just print it in a loop directly. So if and we can just write here menu driven code. Basically, what is a menu driven code? Means it also runs in a while loop. Like until the user says exit, it will be asking you guys like if you want to enqueue or dequeue or display the elements, and it's also showing the a quit element. So until the user says quit, it will be running the element. So this is this pseudocode, and you can use this pseudocode in any language. Like you can use this pseudocode in a C language, Java, C++, Python, and JavaScript. So basically, it's a pseudocode. Like it's this basic logic. Like how can we write everything? So right now I'm going to execute this code in VS Code. I think VS Code is familiar with you all guys. So as I told here in the pseudocode, if you guys can see, firstly we have to give a node class over here. So if we take class node, I'm just giving constructor init self comma data self dot data is equals to data, and then we have to give the location. We are entering the location name as next because it's very familiar with you guys. Like next means the next element or next location. Self dot next. Basically, it's a none because we don't know what's the location. So we can just take it as none, and then we can just give another class like queues because our basic theme in this video is queues. So we can just give queues, and then we can just give another constructor for the front and rear. So we can just write here def underscore underscore init underscore of self. So if we take here self dot friend is equals to none, self dot rear is equals to none. I think you guys just can understand this basic simple code over here. Basically, what I did is I just created a class node where we can just give the data, and we can just give the location over here like next dot none, and then we are taking the linked list, like we are taking another class as queues. So we are just giving the front as none, rear as none because we don't know, we don't give any input right now. So right now it's none, the front is none, the last is also none. So if we go here like another function dq, sorry nq, as I told, nq is a inserting data into the linked list. So we can just write here, I'm going to give name new node is equals to node of data. I'm using the class or inside this class, so we can directly call this function. So we can just not write here node of data or just downwards the menu driven code. We can just directly write like this. So if we see I'm using here if case. If once I'm going to show this the so if you see here, I just wrote as I told you. Firstly, I just wrote here class class node, and then I created a class, and then I just take this as none, and then I'm going to write enqueue. So you guys can see the how the pseudocode is working, how we can just write the code in Python or in the VS Code, or you can just use the Collab or Jupyter Notebook. So I'm going to write like friend, self.friend is none. We can just give self.friend is equals to new node. And if there is if it is none, it's the first element which is coming into the linked list. So friend and here first element is friend, last element is also the only single element. So we can just write self dot rear is equals to none. Self dot rear, sorry, new node. So we can just take here else case. If it is having element, we have to add another element. So we can just write self dot rear dot next is equals to new node. So it is basically what's mean the second node we are taking self dot rear dot next is equal to new node. So we can just write self dot rear is equals to new node. So if you guys just understand clearly what I'm writing here is we're just taking a second element as the new node, and self dot rear dot next means it is connecting the first element and the second element. So NQ is completed. Fit our next function is DQ.
Closing
Uh, we are taking about DQ. If self dot friend is none, we can just return like around print list is empty because the self dot friend is the first element. If there are no elements in the list, we cannot print, we cannot take out any element. So we can directly write the list is empty, and then we can use here else case DQ, like we are just talking removing out the element. So I'm just giving name, removing. I'm just giving the name removing equal to self dot friend dot data. Basically, what is the dot data comes here? Dot data, if you see up, it's the input data which we're giving input. So if we keep self dot friend dot data, it prints the data which is in the self dot friend. So the what's basically q first in first out. So we are going to remove the first element. So if we remove the first element, it won't be in the list. So you cannot be seen. So we can just print over last like what's the element which we popped out. Okay. So if we take this case, self dot friend is equals to self dot friend dot next. If you see clearly this statement, as I told in the pseudocode over in the DQ, we're just taking the friend element is equal friend dot next. Like we're just giving the self dot friend is a head giving to the second element. If we give to the second element, the first element is breaking the link. So the first element will be deleted automatically. So at last we're going to give the removing element as we took self dot friend dot data, we're going to like print it. What's the element which is popped out? So we can just write here self dot friend dot next. If who knows the self dot the second element is none, so we can just write here self dot friend is none, self dot rear is equals to none. Because if second element is not there, we cannot just take the rear element because rear is the last element. So if there is only one element, that is only friend, that is only real. So after you can just print like removed element is equals to removing. Like removing is the as we give removing is equal to self dot friend dot data, we can just print it. Like removed element is equal to removed because we don't know after removed the displaying of the linked list, we cannot see the removed element. So DQ is also completed for here. Right now we are going to display like what are the elements which are in the linked list. Here also this case comes like the first element is not there in the list. We cannot print any element. So there is no element at all. So we can just write here directly if self dot friend is none, we can just print it. List is empty. So we can just write here else case. Uh, Same. I will just give some name like uh, display element. Display elements element is equals to self dot friend. We can just run here while loop. One second, I'm going to show this over here. As we see, I explained in pseudocode display. Uh, I just showed this part. Right now we are over here. I'm just taking here new node and over there I took display dot element. We can take anything where which we want. So we have to write here while loop, which is infinite loop, which can be run infinitely until the condition is satisfied. So over here we're gonna take while self dot friend, or we can just directly display because we just gave the name display element is not none. We can just directly say print cell display element dot data and is equals to if you want to print them in line we can just click here. I'm just giving some dash over there because it just specifies the first element, second element. In between you guys can see it's as a link. I'm going to keep like this, okay? You guys can see as a link, like it is connected as a link in the line. So display element dot data. I think you guys might understand dot data. It's the function which helps the linked list to print the output of the element, like what which we have given the input. So here, okay, then we can just write here this display element is equals to display element dot next. Here basically what's this line? You guys can see why I wrote this line. I'm just telling the laptop that code take the we have input of output of the first element and then we have to print the second, third and fourth element. I'm just telling that take self friend as second element and print the second out and take it as third, take the third output. So here if you see the code of NQ DQ display is completed. And right now I'm going to write here menu driven code like it asks the user like how just you want to keep the element or you want to delete the element. We can just write here if name is equals to main. If name is equals to main,
Huh?
If name is equals to main, we can just call the class q is equals to, if q is equals to q, see, if you guys see, I'm just calling this class over here. You guys might ask me like, why are you not calling this class node? Because I'm just calling the class node inside the class queue once again. So there is no need of writing another calling class node again. So we can just write while true. While true means it's always true. It runs the infinite times. It means it asks us until the loop breaks. So we can just write here print uh, one is NQ or insert element. You guys might ask me, what is this slash n? Slash n is used for printing the element in the next line. You can just say next line. So second dot dq or popping out popping out first element. And we can write over here the third one as display. The third one as display. And the fourth one, we're just having only three functions over here. So fourth one we can write as if you want to quit, like quit from the loop. Okay. So here we have to give some input. X is equals to, I'm just giving here 1, 2, 3, 4 int of. I think you guys might be familiar with this int of input, which it's a basic while learning Python. Enter number. So I'm just writing over here enter number. So it's asked the input, and then we can write here if case. X is equals to 1. We can just call q, sorry, I think data, but we did not give any data. So we can just write over here like x is equals to 1. We can write data is equals to input. Like it is asking the user, like what do you want to give? Like it's not manually typing the data. It's asking the user. And any user which who don't know the code also they can just give the data. So we can write here input. As I told, this code is going to be used for delivery. Like I'm just writing customer details. I'm just writing customer details. So it's asked the customer details. Like if you can just write the name of the customer, the ID of the customer. Okay. Uh, we can just call the function q dot enq of data. If you just take a look over here, why I'm writing like this? Because as I just mentioned, the class q as q is it, and the enq is a function which is inside the class. So I'm going to call the function, and the data is the input which we're going to give in the inserting in the enq part. So q dot enq. So I'm just calling inside the class function. So we have to give a dot over there. So if we take elif case, elif x is equals to 2. What's our x is equals to 2? It's a dq part. So we can just say q dot dq, and we can just write elif x is equals to 3. We can say q dot display, and if x is equals to 4, we can just write here break. I think it's very familiar with you guys. We just give here quit. The person who just inputted we just give the input, and DQ and every function is completed. If he wants to quit, he can just type the 4 over there. The element will be, this loop will be break, and he will be coming out of the loop. So for this display element, if you see over here we are just displaying like what are the things which are gonna work over there. So if you see like for DQ, we are going to pop, we are going to remove one element over there. So I think it's every function is good. We can just save it, and once after writing the code, you guys has to analyze the code firstly, because you might think the code will be right and it will be working, but sometimes it might not work, sometimes it might work. So there will be some minor changes. So we cannot just figure it out, like we cannot just say it's good, it's working. We can just verify once line to line, like yeah, I just wrote here over there, yeah, it will be going to that place and it's working like this. We can just cross verify it once. So if we cross verify it, that gives us feel like, yeah, I just wrote right. I'm right. I'm right in this situation. I just took this case over there and it's working, it's linking over there. So we can just check the code over here and then we can just run it. If we run the case, it is asking the enter number. I'm just giving one. It's asking the customer details. So if you see here customer details, I did not keep an int. We can just give the name. So here I'm just giving my name, Aditya. Again, it's the loop is running. If you want to display the element, I'm going to print 3. You guys can see here, Aditya. So it is combining over here, it's coming the next. So we can just wait 1 minute. Yeah, I'm just giving here before slash n because it will be coming into the next line. So like this, some minor changes will be there. You can just check the changes and everything will be fine. See, again, I'm just typing one, customer details, Aditya, and again one, I am typing some customer details like Karthik, some random names. Right now, this is basic code. You can just use some random names. So I'm going to display it. If you see over here, I'll be zooming it 1 minute. If you see over here, it is quite visible. You guys can see how it's linking. Firstly, I just wrote the name Aditya, and then it is going to link to Karthik. You guys can see how. So this is in the pseudocode. You guys want to go back to the pseudocode A part, and you guys can see like how the friend element. So I'm going to tell you, this is the friend element which we're writing self for friend. This is the real element. The element is the last element. Like if you go section 2 DQ, see you can just see here removed element. Removed element is Aditya. You guys can right now display only Karthik is left. Like how it's taking, how it's removing the element Aditya. If you see over here DQ part, as I told, self dot friend. Here self dot friend is Aditya, and it is taking self dot friend dot next as self dot friend. So it is taking Karthik element as self dot friend. So we can just take the first element is automatically unlinking. It is going to be deleted and it is going to be self dot friend. And you can just write over here for quit. Which function is completed, the loop is completed. You guys can just take a screenshot of this code and try yourself. Like take a pen and paper, try once in a pen and paper, try the pseudocode. And while coding, you will be getting so many obstacles. Like you might get difficulty in the classes functions, and you might get difficulty like how this friend dot next and everything will be. It will be difficult. It might take you some time, like 1 week to understand how to write the self-load friend, self-load trigger, how to take these functions, everything. But just give some time to your brain. Just understand it, how it's going to work. Okay, guys. I think it's you guys might understand it very easily. And right now I'm going to tell you how it's connected to delivery. So if we talk about the uh, delivery, it's a logistic company. As I told over here, the product and order. The person who orders first is going to take C. If he is the customer one, he's customer two, customer three. If you see over here, if the customer one orders, like if you see like Bluetooth gadgets, if he orders like Bluetooth AirPods, Bluetooth buds, he will be firstly the customer who is in the top, his package will be packed and his package will be shipped first. Because we cannot say that the customer, we cannot just directly just pack the order of customer three first, because customer three is quite a little bit late because from customer one, apart from customer one. So we can just take the customer one as the main order, first order, and we can just pack his order, we can just ship it. And as we see over here, we can just ship the order to warehouse. From warehouse, the if the from particular location, some items will be packed up in locations and it will be shipped. But we have to give the major priority to the first customer. Okay, guys. I think you guys might understand better about showing this diagram and explaining about queues. Basically, in this logistic company, the queues are very useful. In the backend, they're going to use data structure algorithms using queues, linked list, because using linked list, it might help them in storing the data in less amount. And it links the data like one, two, three, four. How many members are there? We can just link one and another. We can just link to the another member like in a chain of sequence. So you guys might understand it better. You guys can take a look over this code, take a screenshot of this code. It's a menu driven code. I think you might be very familiar with this code because you can just see this code in everywhere. This while true function. While it breaks, it comes out of the loop. Okay guys, see you in the next video.